Your son, he's gone. He was weak and foolish, like his father. So I destroyed him.
What are you thinking about?
I do what I do because of my dad. He was a hero. He gave his life for the pursuit of knowledge.
Control, you getting that over?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Weak and Foolish Movie Podcast. My name is Mike Tang, and with me is
Joe Bang.
Today we will be discussing the sci-fi space film Ad Astra from director James Gray, starring Brad Pitt. The plot synopsis from Google reads, 30 years ago, Clifford McBride, played by Tommy Lee Jones, led a voyage into deep space, but the ship and crew were never heard from again. Now his son, played by Brad Pitt, a fearless astronaut, must embark on a daring mission to Neptune to uncover the truth about his missing father and a mysterious power surge that threatens the stability of the universe. So each of our podcast episodes begins with a non-spoiler section of the movie where we describe our thoughts on the film without revealing any specific plot details. This section is then followed by a spoiler discussion where we delve into all aspects of the film. So without further ado, here is our non-spoiler discussion of Ad Astra. So Job, why don't you take us away? What did you think about this film?
Yeah, Ad Astra feels like a film that was trying really hard to be important and cerebral. And honestly kind of was that for a while. And I feel like towards the end of the film kind of lost where it was going and turned into more of a crowd-pleasing, feel-good sort of ending. I like the movie overall. It was visually very incredible. And I mean, any movie that Hoyt van Hoytema shoots is going to look visually incredible.
I didn't know he shot this film.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Wait, I should probably look that up. No, he shot this film. It's pretty clear that he did, and it looks very filmic. It looks timeless. I really enjoy that, and overall, I do like the world that they built for this story. It felt real. It felt tangible. It felt immediate. It felt like possible. It felt like a vision of our future in the real world, and I was extremely fascinated by some of the tech that seems like it'll be within our reach in our lifetimes. One of them, and I hope this isn't a spoiler, it's like a giant space antenna, space antenna. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that was in the trailer, so I think it should be fine if we discuss
that. Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah. That, I mean, what happens with it is a spoiler, so I'm not going to say much more, but I love the concept of that. Yeah, and overall, it was a good movie. I didn't have that much else to say about it without kind of digging into some story points, but I would give it a solid film that kind of lost its way. Mm-hmm. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of sci-fi movies. It's probably my favorite genre, so like you, I think there's a lot. I agree, there's a lot to appreciate here. I didn't expect this from the movie, but the world building is actually really fascinating. Like you said, it feels like a future that is tangible and it's within our reach within maybe the next 50 years or so. I feel like it takes a very realistic look at what space travel would look like in the future. We see bases on like the moon and Mars, and neither of them are particularly clean and modern. Like when we think of modern sci-fi movies, they kind of portray the future as being very like crisp, right, and clean and white. But here there's like dust and grime everywhere. There's lots of concrete and gray, white cement structures. A lot of areas aren't even brightly lit on the moon and also on Mars. I thought that was really interesting, and I feel like it takes into account space travel that's been commercialized by capitalism. We see American restaurants and companies in different locations. Yeah, right. I think there's like an Applebee's too, right, or something like that, or Arby's, something like that. So yeah, truly unique and fascinating set pieces and action sequences too. I didn't expect that. I think a lot of these sequences are revealed in the trailer. Like you mentioned, there's a huge space antenna that starts on Earth and it extends all the way into space. It's like a one long tower.
Yeah.
And that whole sequence,
like a Tower of Babel almost.
yeah, totally, like literally a Tower of Babel, like extends into the heavens, and that whole sequence was stunning. It reminded me of Gravity. The CGI
Yes.
was so well done in that scene, and this is also from the trailer, but there was actually an action sequence on the moon. It feels like Gravity and Aquaman mixed together. And a lot of interesting artistic choices too. There's like really good sound design. A lot of the action scenes in this movie, they takes place in space, but it's not completely absent of sound. You hear like low bass muffles and explosions. I thought that was a really interesting touch. But yeah, I gotta agree with you. Like, there's a lot to appreciate about this movie, and it was very interesting. But I also feel like it kind of lost its way towards the end. Everything I just described is probably just 5 minutes out of a 2-hour movie.
True.
And I feel like this is one of those rare movies where the parts are actually better than the total sum.
Yeah.
What the movie is going for and the overall story, I don't think it's as interesting as those smaller moments and smaller set pieces that Brad Pitt has to navigate before he gets to the end of the movie. And I just kept thinking to myself during each sequence, man, I want to see more of this. But, the movie kept going and it never went back. We never revisited some of those ideas. So I think that was a little bit disappointing for me because I feel like there's so much that was ripe for exploration, and expansion.
Yeah.
Maybe we could
Totally.
get,
And
yeah, go on.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just saying, one of these streaming services, right? I was reading today about Apple TV Plus and HBO Max and just how much these companies are spending on TV shows. Like Apple TV Plus spent $200 million on 2 seasons of The Morning Show, and like $200 million on C. And each season of one of those Marvel Cinematic Universe TV shows, like Hawkeye or Winter Soldier and Falcon, each of those seasons cost like $100 million, $200 million. So, dude, give us an Ad Astra show, man, or a show that takes place in this world. There's so much good stuff in here. I can totally see this being like an Apple TV Plus type show. There's a certain quality to it that I feel like it kind of fits the Apple like aesthetic and brand.
Yeah, it's kind of like this futuristic look at the future in a way. There is a space TV series coming for Apple TV Plus called For All Mankind,
right?
Which is kind of cool. I like the concept of it. It's just like Man in the High Castle, where it's like, what if the Soviets, or like in Man in the High Castle, it was what if the Nazis won, but if it was the other way around, or in For All Mankind, it's what if the Soviets won the space race, which is really interesting. We'll probably talk about that when it comes out. Are you planning to get Apple TV Plus?
So I just found out my dad is planning on getting a new iPhone. So
there you go.
He's gonna get a year free, and I'm definitely gonna be on that.
Nice. There you go. Well, before we slip into the Apple podcast here, we can jump back into Ad Astra. I think we could move into spoilers since we're kind of there already.
Yeah, sure. So spoilers starting right now.
No, you're still holding on! Let go!
Before I go any further, kind of to follow the theme of what you said, where each moment kind of felt like it could have been its own fully fleshed story. I loved the space chase, the space pirate thing in the sequence on the moon. That was so sick. It was like Mad Max and, like you said, Aquaman and all of that rolled into one, but it all felt so realistic. It's like, as soon as mankind finds a new frontier and starts to monetize it, then you're gonna see the worst in mankind, and space pirates is like the natural next step once capitalism has taken over a frontier land. I thought that was cool, and really, honestly, kind of had nothing to do with the plot, the overall plot of the movie. If you took that scene out, I don't think it would have affected anything, but it was cool.
There was that scene where they're headed towards Mars, but then they have to take a detour to like rescue people on this ship that had like a distress signal. Completely like tangential to the story, right? Like it had nothing to do with anything. It had no bearing on the overall story or plot or themes, right? And then they dock on the ship and it becomes a horror film.
Yeah.
There's like a mutated monkey or something that's like killing people in the ship, and it kills the captain of the spacecraft that Brad Pitt is on. Like it has nothing to do with his mission, right? But the movie just stops and becomes a horror movie for 5 minutes, and then kind of resumes. I don't know what the point of, like that in itself, like that's a terrifying movie. That's a great horror film, like set in space. Like, yeah, give us give us a movie about that. Give us a different movie about the moon, space pirates. Give us a movie about that huge tower in the Tower of Babel, in the beginning. Like those are all, they all deserve their own movies. You can create stories around those things. Like I feel like the movie is, it kind of builds up to the moment where Brad Pitt is united with his father.
Yeah.
Right? Like the whole movie is like about him going through all this stuff, like the moon base chase, freaking crazy monkeys in space, and then there's that whole fiasco on Mars. And then he has to go from Mars all the way to Neptune, right? So the whole movie is building up to this point where, he has to confront his father, and his father is like this figure that looms over the entire movie. You see flashbacks, you see glimpses of his childhood, and there's all this mystery about him too, right? Because the perception of his father is that he's very heroic, but then through these little secret tapes that they show Brad Pitt, it's revealed that he's had some shifts and changes in his attitude towards humanity. And so it begs the question, right? What happened to this man? And I was actually really excited. Okay, here, when we get to the third act, okay, he's gonna come face to face with his dad. We're gonna find out. It's gonna finally culminate in this moment. And he comes face to face with him in this hollowed out spaceship, right? It's really very freaky. Clearly, it's been a lot of time since there was life in this place.
Yeah.
And then they start talking, and then there's like nothing in this. Yes, there's nothing.
To a halt.
There's nothing in this conversation that paid off the whole voyage that he went on to get to this point.
Yeah. And
basically the whole thing is Tommy Jones just says, I never loved you. I never loved your mom. And so maybe this is the character, but he still had to endure all this stuff to get to this point, right? And I feel like the movie needed to give us more.
Yeah, it felt kind of just like we were meant to feel this emotional connection. They kind of set it all up, right? Like this Brad Pitt's character is supposed to really love his father, and they're supposed to have this great relationship, but then nothing comes of it. When we finally get there, it just feels like, I don't know, I felt like I should have had a balloon and just let all the air out, and go like, like it was so anticlimactic. And you were about to say something. I'm so sorry.
I was just thinking like maybe this is just who the character is, and maybe they're just writing the character to be true to the character. But I think you always have to think about the people who are watching the film and what they're feeling, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking, as we were talking about this, I was just thinking about The Last Jedi, when at the beginning when Rey hands the lightsaber to Luke, and we've been waiting 2 years to find out what he would do, what he would say, and all he does is just toss it behind him.
Yeah.
And it's, we've read and we've heard Rian Johnson's explanation of that situation, right? Like he has really good reasoning for why he wrote Luke the way he did in that scene and for the entire movie. So even though it's true to that character, in that moment, I feel like he could have said like a couple words or said something, and then like drop the lightsaber or throw it behind him. Something to kind of ease us into this, or to pay off the 2-year wait that we had to endure from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi. And, I think the same principle applies here in this film. But I feel like this film is like the entire movie. We've been waiting the entire movie for this confrontation, and it just is like you say, it grinds to a halt. It doesn't give us, I think, what we need as an audience to feel something.
Yeah.
Or to feel what the movie wants us to feel.
Yeah. It made me feel like, oh my goodness, do I not get this movie? You know?
Yeah.
I had
right.
some
Like,
moments
is there
where I
something
was like,
more, right?
Yeah. Was there something I missed here? Like, why is this being, for a movie that's like kind of a character study with all these extreme close-ups, and we're supposed to feel, like usually when the camera is that close to Brad Pitt, I mean, besides trying to sell it, sell his highly marketable face.
Yeah.
That's usually to, lend the audience or like bring the audience into their psyche. And for how often we see Brad's face in the close-up, I felt like Brad Pitt, I don't even know his actual character. We feel nothing for this guy. I don't know about you. I just felt like I don't know this guy. I don't really get him.
I have read like an interpretation of the movie that I thought was kind of interesting. I guess we can move into that. Well, actually, before we move into that, I just want to say, when the two men leave the ship and then Brad Pitt is trying to get him to return back to his ship, Tommy Lee Jones just wants to be let go into the abyss of space.
Yep.
Like, let me just ask you, did you feel anything? Did you feel sad, or like, did you feel any emotions?
Honestly, I almost started laughing. I was like, wait, what? And he said something like, "You have to let me go, son." And
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought, oh, okay, what's gonna happen? Maybe this will be about Brad like not letting go, and saving his father. But he just like ejects himself and wisps away towards one of Jupiter's rings, and that's that. And
Yeah.
I was just kind of confused. It was like, wait, what? What just
It
happened?
was actually it was Neptune.
Oh, Neptune. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, we can't get the planets right. I thought it was Uranus at first, and then my friend had to correct me on that.
It was Saturn. No.
Yeah, I just feel like the lack of emotion that we feel as an audience, well, at least me and you. I'm sure some people out there felt something, but I had a feeling you didn't feel anything either. I just think because they didn't earn it.
Yeah.
They needed to earn it in that moment, and they didn't. So
Agreed.
So just talking about, I read an interpretation about the film. Like, if you just take it as at face value, it's a story about an estranged father and his son who goes on a quest to bring him back. Right. Mm-hmm. There was an interpretation about this movie about how it is actually about God's relationship to man. And I did notice throughout the movie that it does talk about God throughout. There's a scene where one astronaut blesses another astronaut, right. He says, like, "May you meet your Redeemer face to face and enjoy the vision of God forever."
Oh yeah.
And then Tommy Lee Jones says in one of his vlogs something along the lines of being in space and being confronted with infinite expanse of space. It's helped him feel closer to God. And so there's an article on Vox that I read about how Ad Astra is actually about the absence and silence of God. Kind of like along the lines of Martin Scorsese's Silence.
Yeah.
So that article had more of an allegorical type reading of the film. Like God Tommy Lee Jones is like God. He's so far removed from humanity. He's distantly judging us from afar. And I thought this is
sort of see that. Do you buy that?
Well, so there's an arc in the movie where throughout the movie Brad Pitt has like an estranged relationship with his wife as well, where his girlfriend Liv Tyler.
Right.
It's not entirely clear like what happened with him, but it seems like he's just very emotionally distant and cold. And but after encountering his father in deep space and he returns, like one of the last shots of the movie is him and Liv Tyler reuniting again at like a cafe or something. So I think there it's kind of saying something about how maybe the human response to an absent God is for humans to just embrace and love one another, to connect with each other, because we can't connect with our creator. So we need to watch out for one another and love one another.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting take, and I can kind of see it read that way. You can kind of read the film that way. As I was kind of like rewinding it in my head, I'm like, okay, it's a possible interpretation. It kind of makes it slightly more palatable than if you just take it at face value.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I could see that. I'm not a huge fan of that for obvious reasons. But I could see how that could be what the filmmaker was thinking. I am curious to know a little more. I'd like to hear the writer or the director kind of explain a little more what they were thinking through this film. And maybe that'll help me to understand it a little better. But all of that being said, this movie isn't irredeemable. It is a good, well-made film for the most part. Visually it's good.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Yep.
If by the time of us recording this, it's probably out of theaters or on its way out. So definitely check it out when it's when it's on streaming or rental. Like, definitely check it out. It's definitely worth it if you like sci-fi.
Make sure you're awake too.
Yeah,
it is a slow film.
It's a slow film. It's a very quiet film. I think it kind of reminded me of Terrence Malick, combined with like Gravity. It's just like anytime I think you deal with space, you're gonna get very philosophical. So there's a lot of like quiet whispering narration from Brad Pitt. A lot of pondering about it's definitely less on the nose and straightforward than something like Interstellar.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely more Gravity than Interstellar.
Yeah. I think Interstellar is a way better film, but that's a discussion for another time.
For sure. All right, Job, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Nope. I think, yeah. We should cut this out. I should just go like, nope.
All right. Well, that was a very short episode, but this movie, we didn't have that many thoughts on it, so we hope you would check it out and consider it. It's definitely worth a watch. Until next time, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you then.
See you later.